Bitcoin protocol as described in the Satoshi white paper is actually pretty different from the Bitcoin that we're using today. And it's not that, it's just that it's different. And there are things that are possible in the code that haven't really been activated or we haven't figured out how to implement yet. Can you kind of talk to us about some of the more exciting things you see coming?
So I don't think that what Satoshi wrote in his white paper is really that much different than what Bitcoin is today. Most of the core concepts are there. Probably his biggest mistake or projections was having to do with mining. He believed that Bitcoin was going to be made up of a network of people, and all of them would have have their computer CPU mining, and that everyone in the world would be mining with their CPU, and the inflation of the system would all be going to all the participants at once. And instead, we ended up with this arms race of mining hardware and ASICs, and even before ASICs, GPUs. It became a very specialized system. So that was one thing that wasn't quite what Satoshi had in mind when he created it. But I think most of the other core concepts of Bitcoin are there. His paper was very proof of concept. It was more kind of looking at what could happen, but it didn't describe everything that Bitcoin is being used for now and what it will be used for. But it was pretty clear by the way that he designed it and his subsequent 2 years kind of in the community helping develop it, that he built a whole programming scripting language into the system. I mean, Bitcoin is programmable money. And he very clearly understood that more than just being able to move money from one person to another, that you can do really complex things with this. For instance, a lot of people have heard of multi-signature transactions. This is something that's not in use right now, but Armory, which I developed, is something I hope to innovate, where you can actually encumber your funds requiring multiple signatures. You could put 3 people or 3 devices onto your wallet, and then you need 2 signatures from any one of those from any of those devices in order to move the funds, which dramatically increases security. That's not something that was really mentioned in the white paper. Then, of course, it's been a while since I read it, so I don't remember. But a lot of these things were not mentioned. The richness of kind of contracts that you can build with the protocol, but we're not really there. But I mean, he very clearly had that in mind when he developed this programmable money system. And, I think that he didn't know everything that was going to be built off of it, but he certainly knew how powerful it was when he made it.
Okay. So let's jump forward then and talk about some of the programmable money applications that are coming in the next, say, year to 18 months. One of the ones that's been most interesting to me, because I deal a lot with microtransactions, is the concept of microbilling. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know if that's the correct term for it, but I mean, it's a term that's being used for it. Can you kind of explain to the audience what microbilling is and what types of niches it might be used in? So
one of the issues of the Bitcoin protocol is that, it's not really the protocol. There's kind of an artificial limit on how many transactions can flow through it. And there's, me and a lot of the developers believe that that'll have to be increased at some point to accommodate how fast Bitcoin is growing. But until then, we do, while Bitcoin was kind of proposed as a method of being able to do microtransactions very efficiently, having a billion people executing thousands of transactions, per day, to pay 2 cents to view a web page or $1 to pay, to watch a video, 30-second video. The system is not really in a shape to handle that. However, one of these advanced contract concepts that I don't know if Satoshi ever acknowledged it or if it had been kind of devised before he kind of exited the scene, was this idea that you can create a system where you create a payment, but you can replace it later. And the payment basically is, it's called it time locked, that you have 30 days or whatever time you choose to replace this payment. And that replacement can happen without touching the blockchain or the network or anything. And so you can guarantee someone a payment, and then you too, off the network, can mutually agree to change that. And they'll know, both parties know that the final state of this transaction is valid, and if both parties just suddenly stop responding, the current state of that, the replacement would go through, which means that you can now charge, you set up one of these micropayment channels, they're calling it, and you can actually bill, say, walk into a coffee shop sign up with their internet, and you'll give them maybe a 1 week time lock. And for that week, every kilobyte, every megabyte, every second, whatever you want, every tiny increment that you pay them, you can simply just replace the payment that you made to them, giving them more, and you don't have to touch the network. And it's very, very efficient. You could do literally 1,000 microtransactions a second. And so what you're doing is you're taking this two parties that are engaging in some relationship, you're setting up a channel, and then you're letting them do as many microtransactions as they want, as fast as they want. You can do up to like 4 billion before the thing expires. So it really opens up the possibility of, you could sign up with, say, the New York Times. I forget which, maybe Wall Street Journal that charges for their articles. You could just set up a monthly payment, and for every page you read, they could charge you a penny. Makes pay per use much easier. And those microtransactions then become instantaneous. You don't have to wait for the confirmations. So you're replacing these thousands of transactions that you would do with basically two transactions, one at the front and one at the end to finalize it. And this is something that I think Bitcoin J, which is kind of an API that people, developers are building applications off of. I think they implemented that, and it's something that the other wallet developers want to implement, because it really does. When you're doing a lot of transactions between parties that have a relationship and are going to do a lot of transactions with one another, it really takes a lot of load off the blockchain, and it takes this system of thousands of transactions and converts it to basically two, and then they can all happen instantaneously and as many as you want.
Thank you, Alan.
Yep.
Justice, and we have microphones over here and over here. After I finish questioning Justice here, we'll be taking questions, so if anybody wants to start letting up, you're welcome to do that now. Justice, one of the good news, bad news features about Bitcoin is that it's neutral and irreversible. That works great when things go well, and it works kind of poorly when they don't. I know that feels like this got louder. I know that you're working on a solution kind of to this problem, so can you tell us about this?
Yeah, one of the first things that attracted me to Bitcoin when I learned about it was that it is a currency for the world. It's not specific to any country, and it has wide-ranging uses and might even be most useful for people outside the developed world, people who don't have traditional economic opportunities. But when you start to think about how can we actually enable all of these people in the developing world to enter a global decentralized marketplace, you need more than just currency. You need the ability to create business deals and contracts. And beyond that, you need a way to create recourse and dispute resolution whenever something doesn't go according to plan. Right now, there are no good solutions for that. So what we're working on, myself in a collaboration with some other people, is a method for writing smart contracts that builds recourse directly into the contract in the form of bonds. All the parties in a contract lock up money ahead of time, which is released by a series of scripts. If the main business deal closes and everybody's happy with it, everyone gets their bond back, no problem. If there is a dispute or a problem of some kind, if there are what would be contractual damages in a court, then the contract, by the virtue of one of the parties issuing a dispute message, now we move to another stage where some sort of third-party arbitration will decide the allocation of the bond. And we're going to have a general API for these contracts. So ideally, in as many cases as possible, you would want that third-party arbiter to be an automated software agent. But in the case where you have a dispute by its nature that requires some sort of human judgment and intervention, then you would tie that third-party arbitration into a mutually chosen human arbitration company. So we have the marketplace for doing business deals and also a marketplace for people to advertise arbitration companies, and tying it all together into a convenient user interface.
So now, why is this something that's better than a solution that's out there right now like Judge.me that does allow for that's a centralized solution, but it does allow for stateless contracts?
Well, one of the things that's so advantageous about Bitcoin is its decentralized nature. And what you get with decentralization is an absence of censorship and prior restraint. And those are features that no centralized solution in general can ever provide. Because anything that's tied up into a traditional business model, they're going to operate in a legal jurisdiction. They're going to have rules that they have to follow to stay in business, which may not be what their customers actually want. So I see centralized solutions to these general business problems as a step backwards. We have a completely free market, decentralized money, and all of our solutions we build on top of that should retain the same characteristics without adding central points of failure.
So play out the logic for a second. If you're successful with what you're doing, what does the world look like in 5 years?
Our goal is to create a world, I'll talk about it in two parts. For creators of digital deliverables in the developed world, we want to make their lives a lot more flexible in terms of where they can live. The overall goal is if you're operating in the digital realm, it shouldn't matter where your residence is. Your economic opportunities should be the same. So for people who, say, are living in the higher cost of living countries, they might not want to move there. They may not want to live there inherently, but they have to for their own economic reasons. We want to give you freedom on that end to live wherever you want in the world and still access the same marketplace. On the other side, we have the people living in the developed world who do not have access to global markets, they're shut out. They can't get effective entrance into these markets. They can't sell to a U.S. company because even if they're capable of doing the work, nobody trusts them. Why would you hire a programmer from Nigeria when that country has this geographic stigma attached to it because of email scammers? When you create smart contracts that are not dependent on government-issued law systems, they cross borders frictionlessly. So now somebody who is a good programmer in Nigeria can ensure their contracts that they sign in a way that anyone will trust them. Now they do have access to a global customer base. Now they can take full advantage of the economic opportunities that cryptocurrencies bring.
Thank you, Justice. And we'll go to our first listener question over here.
Hey, thanks. How you doing? David, very quickly, from New York, we work closely with some Wall Street firms, and we've always seen Bitcoin as being in the future tied to corporate shares in such a way as to create added value within the corporate economic ecosystem. So thank you for your work there, and Bridget, I hope to talk to you about that later. Pele, in terms of Kenya, pardon me, you have like Douglas Goldie Scott's BitPesa, coming up there in Kenya. There's a lot of competition in that space for the Bitcoin market and money transfer and money remittance, et cetera. Where do you see the rest of the world going with that? You mentioned that the concept of replicating M-Pesa around the world has been a difficult one. Really, why is that? And where do you see that also hot spots around the world that are catching on in that regard?
Well, BitPesa is a great company. They're friends of mine, and we have weekly beer and burgers, Bitcoin, crypto, all of that kind of stuff in Nairobi. BitPesa are doing something quite different than we are. They're basically providing, I know they're billing themselves as a remittance company, but what they're really doing is they are an exchange, an out exchange for use in Kenya. And we're not really doing that. We're more trying to replicate or trying to turn Bitcoin into a mobile money system and then integrating with companies like BitPesa.
I see.
One of the other question you had about why mobile money systems have been difficult to replicate, it's basically payment systems are networks. So for a payment system to take off, like any other network, there has to be enough people on the network. So M-Pesa was able to grow really quickly, and the majority of the adult population had an M-Pesa account very quickly, so they were able to take off. So you get the strange situation where you get other countries like Tanzania, Uganda, where there may not be one clear winner, and people are using mobile money. It's just not quite clear which one is the winner because of that. And I actually see Bitcoin as solving that, because Bitcoin is a very large payment network. So if mobile money providers, instead of creating the small little islands, as we call them, they can join into Bitcoin, and then you can send money from Uganda to Rwanda to whatever between operators and those kinds of things.
So Bitcoin is the underlying platform for any service that happens to be, be it M-Pesa, be it Vodafone, be it whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I see Bitcoin as being TCP/IP for money, and that's basically all of these different services can build on top of Bitcoin.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sean Wilkinson. I'm a casual Bitcoin developer and also PureCoin web lead. My question is more on the development side. How you guys went about developing the products and services that you're offering. One thing that I'm kind of seeing in the kind of Bitcoin community, we have all this cool, nice technology, stuff like multi-signature transactions, which is amazing. But then you try to explain that to the developer to actually build and implement that, and they're just like, okay, how do I go about this? There's so little resources to be able to figure that out and be able to actually build that out into a product. So how do you guys go about figuring out the information you need to build out your product, and maybe how can we in the future kind of build out resources so the people in this room can more easily build out products and services for Bitcoin?
I think that's still a challenge in this community. I mean, Bitcoin itself, in some ways, is still has some soul searching to do in terms of how to market itself, how it's going to develop, how it's going to appeal to people, how businesses are going to build themselves around it. I mean, Bitcoin is a fairly complex system, especially at the developer level. I can tell you from having been started my own business recently and trying to get developers that you really do need when you're having people actually dealing with the Bitcoin protocol, you do really need people who are very, very skilled and really, really capable of understanding these deep concepts and getting into it. And I do see that as something that is going to be challenging for Bitcoin. If it's this difficult to get developers to build out the infrastructure, then Bitcoin isn't going to grow as fast as as we'd hoped. But there's all the information is out there. I mean, really, I think most of the issue is developer resources. A lot of it is that we just don't have enough people who are that interested in it. I'm sure the recent growth of Bitcoin has drawn a lot of attention into it, but there's still a lot of.
I just want to say that it's been really hard for us to find developers as well. So we've experienced that, and the information's out there. I was able to learn everything I needed to do it from the information that's out there, but it is hard to find people who have taken the time to experiment with it and understand the first principles behind cryptocurrencies.
So my take on that obviously comes from my standpoint with bitcredits.io is that, see, we're talking about microtransaction channels. All these things, if we wanted users to use that, would need to be built in the wallet. And for example, sending more money each time to someone after each kilobytes, the actual device would need to encrypt all these things. So it's a heavy, requirement on the app side, making that thing really difficult. So that's why I think services like us and a lot of other services who are going off blockchain, right, doing microtransaction elsewhere, well, they can tailor the experience to their particular service. And that's why I'm really proud of it. Our development API, makes it very easy for developers to build their own experience and tailor it to their needs. And it's all off blockchain when you're dealing with credits and small transactions. Otherwise, I think, the burden goes on the wallet side, and it's going to be very difficult to have an experience that's good for all types of services built into the wallet. Yeah.
Stuart, do we have time for one more, or did you say this was the last one?
Thank you.
One more? Okay, over there, you're it. Sorry, guys.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I just have two questions for Pili. The first is, what kind of, what market share does Capote actually have in Africa? Because you mentioned that M-Pesa is currently dominating the market share for that.
Well, right now, Bitcoin it's mainly used by enthusiasts down there. So to get out to a very broad audience, you need integration with mobile phone operators, with banks, and other kinds of institutions to get the really wide usage. So the actual percentage is I mean, it's tiny. I'm not even gonna try and estimate, but it's gonna grow a lot in the next year. I think we're had some conversation before where I was talking about Bitcoin. Bitcoin time is 7 times the speed of internet time, so this is going to happen really, really quickly. And I think probably Bitcoin time in Africa is probably going to be even quicker. But there's a lot of things that needs to be in place for it to reach up to a noticeable, to actually show up as a beat yet. But we will get there.
Thank you very much to everyone on the panel.
EasyDNS is the Swiss Army knife for your domain names, helping meet their customers' individual needs since 1998. EasyDNS has been an outspoken critic of SOPA and CISPA. EasyDNS was an early supporter of Bitcoin, and now they are proud to sponsor this show. Do business with a company that shares your values. Get a 13% discount when you pay with Bitcoin. Go to bitcoin.easydns.com and be sure to use discount code LTB.